Okay. Kind of forgot. I probably shouldn't have started until I had my camera rolling, but working on a couple things today. First of which being I'm going to replace that clutch, or the choke cable back there. And I ran it without the exhaust on today. It is crazy loud, so we're going to be making a baffle later on in a different video for the straight pipe that I've made, that stack. So where we're at right now, there is a fuel line right here that runs from this fuel bowl over to the carburetor. You can see that gap right there is where it normally goes. So you can see there's just a little brass compression ferrule and a nut on either side. This side goes straight into the carb. This one obviously goes up into the outlet of the fuel bowl, that little glass strainer that's dripping right there. Side note, mine is leaking. There is side-to-side play on mine. Let me set this fuel line down real quick and I'll show you. Whoop. There we go. Okay, so I have a leak that's formed right here underneath the bung. I was worried that it was coming out of the tank, but luckily it looks like it's coming out from the threads of this thing. But if you look right now, it's got side-to-side play in it. I've never taken one of these apart, so I'm not sure what all goes in there. We'll get to it, but good news is it seems as if the tank is intact. It's not leaking. The tank itself is not leaking, so that's good news. Those bowls are about 30 bucks online, so even if I have to replace the whole thing, worst case scenario, I can clean up the threads inside the tank and thread in a new fuel bowl, so I'm not super worried about that. So that's probably a project for a later date. I ran the tractor today until it was pretty much out of fuel, so now I'm not dealing with a huge gassy mess, but I have some drips going on. Obviously I have the fuel shut off right here. This is a fuel shut off, so right now the fuel that is in the tank is theoretically only gonna go into this bowl. It's not gonna come out, so I'm not dumping the whole tank right now. So you can get this fuel line off with a 1/2-inch wrench around that nut, and you can back that action off this 90-degree fitting with a 7/16 open end wrench. You can get that on both sides. Disregard the horses. We have a couple horses that are not getting along over there, so that's what that fun sound is. So once you have the fuel line off, set that to the side. We will clean that up. Now we're getting ready to take the carb off. So the way I am electing to do this is right here. I'm getting those two bolts. Those were, if I remember right, I think they were 9/16. Let's check. Yep. So 9/16 bolts right there with just some lock washers. Super easy to get to. You don't have to put an extension on your socket. I didn't have to anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect those there. I have gasket material. I'm going to make my own gasket for this, for the carb to manifold. I'm going to clean up this stuff. This is that mechanic that came and took the carb off for me to first get this running. Didn't have a gasket on hand, so he used some kind of silicone. I don't love that, so I'm going to make a gasket, and I'll talk about how to do that. And then this clamp right here, you can get with a flathead screwdriver, or you can hit it with a 3/8-inch socket. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I'll try to do that one-handed. Loosen that guy up. It should be, yeah, loose now. So I'm gonna disconnect this clamp, make sure it's nice and loose, get that thing way loosened up. Then I should be able to disconnect it from the intake up there. It's kind of difficult to do with one hand, but I think we can do it. No, maybe not. So what we'll do is go ahead and pull these bolts. I need to figure out some kind of method for holding my camera. Maybe I'll just set it up on a tripod next time. Okay. Tell you what, I'm going to put you down for a second and get that off. I need both hands. Okay, before I get this thing fully disconnected, let me show you my plan. So I've loosened that clamp. I'm going to go underneath here and show you. I'm going to go ahead and loosen that clamp right there, because that might be an easier pull. But I loosened the top one because I'm going to pull the whole elbow down and take a look at it, make sure it's in good shape. Then I've got one of these carb to manifold bolts out. Loosen the other one so it's just finger tight, ready to go. The choke cable is still clutched or clamped onto the back side. There's a small clamp right here that's holding my choke cable on, so I need to disconnect that before I finish getting my carb disconnected so that it's not hanging by that thing. I don't love that, so I want to be able to get it loose enough to sit right here on the rail so I can disconnect the choke cable. And that guy right there, you can get it with a 1/4 inch socket. And then over here, I've got the front of my choke cable, a little retainer right here, loose. You can hit that with a, oh gosh, what is it? A 9/16 wrench. So that's what we're going to do. So again, I'm gonna pause and use both hands. Okay, so now I've got the carb off, sitting right here. I've still got my choke cable connected. One thing I forgot to mention is right down there, you can see it right about there. You've got your throttle attachment. There's just a cotter pin through that thing. So once you get it off, get the hoses off of that intake manifold, which look like this is our hose. Once you get that hose off, you can kind of rotate the carb this way and you can pull that cotter pin out and you're free of the throttle linkage, and that's good to go. So when we hook that back up, we'll make sure that we connect the throttle correctly, but we'll look at that. So let me show you how the choke cable is attached. This thing's probably still got some fuel in it. So right here you can see we've got another one of those clamps, and we've got kind of a set screw thing here to grab the end of the choke cable. So you can buy these at any length as long as they'll reach from the wherever you decide to put it. If you put it in the stock location, it just needs to reach up to the carb, and that will hold the liner in place, and then the cable inside the liner will be attached here. So this is actually your choke mechanism. So I'm going to go ahead and get that pulled with both hands, and then I'll show you the carb. We'll get it on the table. Okay, carb is off the machine, completely disconnected. Here is your choke cable. If I can get it to focus. Boom, there's the choke cable, the liner, and the actual wire. Then come up here, disconnect this, give myself some room, disconnect this little retaining nut, which will just thread out real easy. It's just there to give the cable something to pull against. Then it should pull just straight out. There you go. So you can see why I needed to replace this one. If it will focus. There we go. Goodness. The autofocus on this thing is terrible. So my actual housing, I'm going to hold it up to the sky, maybe it'll actually focus there. My housing got disconnected from the sheath itself. I'll try to get it so you can see it. Oh, now it doesn't want to. Well, anyway, this is broken right about there. So I need a new choke cable, which I have. I went and bought a universal one. It has a chrome knob on it, so we'll be replacing that for a black one. Maybe you'll be able to see it now. This is supposed to be attached to the cable itself, and it has become loose, so the cable's entire body pulls. So we're going to get that replaced. We'll get the carb inside. I will open up this bottom nut, drain all the fuel out, and we'll clean this guy up. It'll be looking brand new.